Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who picked Fabio Maldonado to defeat Stipe Miocic. And I'm here to talk about Randy Brown taking on Elizeu Zaleski Dos Santos. All right, my prediction for this fight is Randy Brown wins, and I've got him winning by decision. I bet on him at minus 175 here, but I am not that confident in Randy Brown. I think it's a low confidence pick and bet because Elizeu Zaleski Dos Santos, despite being 37 years old and theoretically over the hill, he still has a lot of fight in him. He's got a lot of great traits, and they've been on full display in most of his wins, but certainly as of late. He had a draw in his last fight against Rinat Fakhretdinov, but Zaleski's traits were there for him in that fight as well, scratching and clawing and doing everything he can, especially down the stretch, to give himself a shot at winning a decision or not losing a decision like he did to Renat. And those traits are still on full display in every matchup. Anybody who's ever beaten him in the UFC has to scratch and claw to beat him, aside from Li Jingliang. That's the one guy that knocked him out. And Li is one of the most dangerous knockout artists in welterweight history. So there's no shame there. But I have to mention he was knocked out somewhat recently. He's been knocked down recently against Rinat Fakhretdinov, not to mention the many other knockdowns he suffered in his career. And the fact that he's 37 and a half years old. I do have a little doubt about his chin as well. But still, if you told me somebody gets knocked out in this matchup, I would say Randy Brown's getting knocked out. Elizeu Zaleski Dos Santos is the much more dynamic striker. And I also think, despite his age and the recent knockout and whatever, he's still probably got the better chin than Randy Brown. Randy Brown's been knocked out by Nico Price with hammer fist from the back. He was knocked out by Vicente Luque, who roughed him up with a knee and took him out with punches. And he was also halfway knocked out against Jack Della Maddalena, who choked him out, but it was halfway to a knockout finish or a TKO finish. So, despite him being 33 and smack dab in the middle of his prime, I do have more doubt about the chin of Randy Brown. But I do think he's still got more to offer in general. On the feet, he may not bring the danger that Zaleski does, but he's got a lot of great assets: the height, the reach, and the movement. He's a very agile fighter, and I think fighting on the outside and being the long fighter, he could take away that kicking game of Elizeu Zaleski Dos Santos. And also, should they mix things up and even if he gets hurt or whatever, I think he can slow the fight down with grappling as well. I think Randy Brown is the better grappler between the two of these guys. I think he's also the more likely grappler, the more willing grappler between these two. And it's not like Zaleski's a fish out of water. He's just a much better striker, but he's competent on the ground. I just think Randy, at the very least, could smother him with his size and big frame, and at the very most, could go through him with jiu-jitsu. Now, Randy Brown's the one who's been submitted more recently. His two submission losses both come in the UFC against Jack Della Maddalena and against Michael Graves way back when. Michael Graves uh, fizzled out of the UFC with some, I think, domestic violence or some shit, but he was a very good fighter, a solid veteran at the time, and he was able to get Randy out of there. But Elizeu Zaleski Dos Santos, he's only got 3 submission victories, 2 way back when and 1 in the UFC over Curtis Millender. And he came close over Rinat Fakhretdinov, actually, in his last fight. But Elizeu, he's been submitted twice himself. He was submitted by 2 good fighters, Bellator and UFC fighters, Viscardi Andrade and Guilherme, whoever the fuck. But both guys got him out of there in round 2, and both losses were over 10 years ago. So it's not like you can totally dismiss them, but I don't think Randy is going to submit Elizeu here in this fight. I think he's better with grappling and whatever and can make more happen on the ground, but I'd be surprised if either guy got a submission victory, to be honest. And As for the points battle, I do think Randy can score points with grappling, and on the feet, I think nobody is comfortable in a points battle with Elizeu Zaleski Dos Santos. If you don't believe me, go watch every fight he's had in the UFC. He's a tough guy to dominate, and he always makes things close. But I still think Randy's a guy who's in his prime and has a lot of distinct physical advantages and is going to make the most of them. I think he's going to get the better on the outside of uh, Elizeu Zaleski Dos Santos and rack up those small moments enough to win a decision. So Randy Brown by decision is the pick, and you could play that at plus 175. I've only played his money line at minus 175 because I have enough doubt in the other ways he can win this fight. Really, the knockout, even though he's only got one clean knockout in the UFC, the one punch against Muslim Salikov, with the others being these longer TKOs over Brian Barberina and Brian Camozzi. Brian Camozzi, I believe, yeah. Uh, I still think, Randy is maybe not dangerous, but he's a guy that will touch you. And Zaleski Dos Santos, having been hurt a few times lately, Rinat Fakhretdinov had him hurt early in the fight. And of course, he was knocked out by Li Jingliang not long ago. I think it's a possibility there. So I feel more comfortable playing the money line of Randy Brown. As for Zaleski Dos Santos, I was tempted to play him because I do think he's one guy who can scratch and claw and win a fight. If I see him as an underdog against anybody where I think the fight is likely to take place on the feet, it's tempting to bet on him. But I haven't bet on him. I'm just sticking with Randy Brown for this one, and I'm trusting him to get it done. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit, and check out my other videos.